Alright, YouTube, you may have seen that Venezuela's having more problems. They had the mother of all marches the other day there. Some people died, and there were people sparring with the police. Maduro apparently is finally concerned enough to arm his sort of communist militias there. That is, the state actually maintains groups of people. They're sort of like partisan-style socialist fighters, and the entire goal is to prop up a far-left government. And so they've started arming them. Maduro now refers to anyone protesting as a terrorist, essentially. So that's the way things are going in Venezuela. Things aren't going to get nice. They're not going to get better there just magically because Maduro cracks down on people. He's already tried this before, you know, a dozen times over the last year. You look at what's happening. The oil prices collapse. A monocultured economy goes into deep, deep recession. Kind of a depression at this point. It's lasted long enough, it's severe enough. I think when people are starving to that degree, in such a widespread manner, medical supplies have run out and so forth, yeah, you can call that a Great Depression as far as Venezuela goes. The thing is, the people of Venezuela are standing on top of an ocean of oil. And if they had just diversified their economy, it wouldn't really be a problem. But Maduro and Chavez and all the others wanted to fritter away all of the productivity when oil prices were high on cheap crap, you know, cottage industries or something like that. And they never weaned themselves off being totally reliant upon this one product. Now, some time ago, Venezuela started re-importing its own currency. Then as its currency got worse and worse, they decided to start basically destroying the lower denominations and printing higher ones. That's possibly an early warning sign that things were going to get far, far worse. They've gotten far, far worse. It looks like this particular protest was much larger than in the past. And the opposition now, Capriles and others, are openly encouraging people to take to the streets to try to oust Maduro. You've got a situation that's only a half step removed from civil war in the nation of Venezuela. And when I look at these protesters, it seems like disproportionately a lot of them are very, very young. It's sort of an inversion of what you see maybe in some countries. You have some far left protest, it's a lot of young people. And you have a right-wing protest, and in some cases, not always, you know, now, not with the alt-right or the new right-wing movement springing up, but traditionally for a long time there, if you had a bunch of people who were more to the right, and they were holding a rally or a protest, they tended to be on the older side. They tended to be, you know, 30 plus or something, and all the teenagers, they were like, oh yeah, Marx was great, communism forever, and stuff like that. In Venezuela, it's totally inverted. It looks like a bunch of older people, perhaps who remember the times before Chavez, still think positively about socialism and honestly believe the crap about, oh, the U.S. is trying to destroy our economy. It's not because we failed to diversify it and we centrally planned everything and it just didn't work because, you know, Maduro was a fucking idiot. And the younger people, they're like, well, we're tired of this crap. You know, because they were born under perhaps the time. They were raised up as things were improving, and they actually got used to a somewhat higher standard of living with more democracy, and now that's been totally taken away. There is no functional representative system anymore in Venezuela. If there were, Maduro wouldn't be in charge anymore. He would have already been ousted. It's very much like what we see in Turkey. In Turkey, a democratic vote was held to decide whether they would be able to continue holding democratic votes. And they decided that they didn't want to do that anymore. They wanted a dictator. So now they've got their own Islamist dictator. In Venezuela, coming again from the government without democratic action, Maduro decides to more or less ignore the constitution that actually exists there to constrain his power, a constitution formerly he said he agreed with totally, and essentially ignore the legislative body there that's already told him, yeah, you know, we have the ability to remove you, and we're tired of this shit. It's time for you to stop doing what you're doing and or step down. And he's refused, but that's the thing. He has all the guns. He doesn't have to step down. The situation in Venezuela will probably devolve further. It will get more and more violent. It's already the epitome of misery and suffering. If ever a nation was going to approach North Korean levels, you know, at the height of one of their worst famines, It looks like it's going to be Venezuela. It's not going to be some buttfuck deep third world African nation with no resources, you know, on the margins of the Sahara Desert. It's not going to be like Chad or something like that. It's actually going to be Venezuela that has a relatively good climate for arability, a sea of oil, all the possible resources that it could possibly ever want. It'd be like any other group of people using any other economic model would be living in condition. I mean, it'd be like a giant Dubai or something at this point. But they never thought to do so, so Venezuela has to collapse and start all over again. And it will have to probably collapse. Oil prices aren't going to go up anytime soon. The U.S., because of its new technology, is pumping out more and more and more oil. The oil prices rise by $5 a barrel, and all of a sudden U.S. oil experiences yet another surge, yet more investment. People say, oh, well, now it's profitable again to drill this out of the ground and pump it up. And so you have more and more U.S. oil. They had an oil strike in Texas last year that was massive. They've now got a new oil strike up in Alaska that's even larger. It's one of the largest discoveries of oil we've had. We're still finding these massive reservoirs of oil. At some point, Venezuela probably won't even have that title of we've got the largest proven reserves. We may very well eclipse them at some point. By then, it'll be too late for the Venezuelans. They'll have to make do with some more slow development. They could have achieved great things. They could already be not just first world, but they'd be like the power of Latin America if they hadn't been using the Chavez-style model. They decided to ignore this, or I should say Chavez decided to ignore it. He was already kind of autocratic at that point. People there are starting to get tired of socialism because they see it's not working. It has nothing to do with some U.S. imperialist plot. The U.S. has barely even involved itself, other than saying, oh yeah, well, we wish that they would hold an election. We haven't done anything else. People seeking to blame the Western world for the problems of central planning are woefully inadequate when it comes to analyzing the situation. Venezuela might collapse. If it does, unfortunately, some of its neighbors will probably have to get involved. Otherwise, I mean, so many people would die, you wouldn't know what to do with them all. Colombia might get involved. The Brazilians may get involved. I think Peru has already cut off diplomatic relations entirely. When you piss off a usually neutral kind of, you know, out there state like Peru to the point at which they don't want to even talk to you, there's a problem. Maduro doesn't even recognize this, though. He's such an egotist. He's just like, I'm going to cling to power. I don't care how many people die. You know, I'll even help them die faster. I'll activate these state militias. When those militias get fully activated, which they are, yeah, it could be a warning that things are about to get 10 times worse. Outright collapse could happen in Venezuela at basically any moment at this point. Their economy has flatlined. There's basically no functioning economy left. There's nobody there that can really save them. It would require too much money, too many resources, I think, to save the Venezuelan people. They have to get rid of Maduro. They have to allow the opposition to restructure the economy. And then they have to try to get foreign investment. In order to do that, they need to clean up the socialists so that foreign firms and states will feel comfortable investing there. Once that's done, they'll be making bank. Yeah, they won't make full price on their oil. It won't even matter. It won't even matter. They've got so much of it, it's peanuts to them. Other people will be the ones investing and actually drilling it out of the ground, using efficient modern systems as opposed to, like, you know, 60s, 70s era oil rigs or something like that. They have the ability to relatively quickly stabilize and diversify their economy. Russia's doing it. Russia's beginning to diversify its economy because it realizes it's a bad idea to be fully reliant on the energy sector, because we've got an era now in which more and more countries are investing more and more of their money in green energy. And it's reducing demand for things like oil and coal and even to an extent natural gas. Venezuela has right now one major resource. But it can build more than that if it tries. One thing that Maduro has done that is a fundamentally good idea, very, very improperly implemented, is the idea of farming, really. He should be just encouraging people to plant home gardens or something like that to make up for the food deficits that are there. Instead, he forces people into collective labor on state land and so forth. Not the best way to go about it. I suppose expedience was in mind when he did that. But that would be a great idea. Venezuela has a huge amount of arable land. You don't even have to cut any rainforest down to attain it. Most of Venezuela would be perfectly fine for this. The farms would sprawl out everywhere. Again, foreign investment would help. I'm not talking about factory farming either. That would be exploitation. Yeah, the socialists are right on that one. You should avoid it. As far as getting foreign investment to get this oil out of the ground and shipped, it would be a good idea. And also, keep in mind, the U.S. is not willing really to buy that Venezuelan oil, even though we have still high demand for oil and probably would like to get it from within this hemisphere as opposed to the Middle East. If Venezuela undergoes a coup, Maduro's out, the opposition takes hold, election is held, things stabilize, it's seen as a sound investment, we'll start buying that oil too. Venezuela will probably become our main supplier, our main heroin dealer for this fossil fuel. It won't be the Saudis anymore. We'll be dealing with Venezuela. We won't even need the Middle East anymore. All these proxy conflicts will stop having any meaning. Those economies will begin to dry up. Nobody else is going to buy their fucking oil. Who else are they going to sell it to? The Europeans are weaning themselves off faster than we are, even though we're pumping our own now. We've become our own. We're creating drugs to use drugs at this point on oil. Who else is going to buy it? You might be able to ship some to, other Middle Eastern nations that have built heavy industry. Might be able to ship it to the Chinese or something, I guess. They're not going to pay you as much for it. You're going to get screwed on any trade deal you sign with them, and you know it. Saudi Arabia would lose probably half of its economy if we weaned ourselves off of their oil pumps. So yeah, Venezuela should. I hope it stabilizes. It'd be good for us. It'd be good for Venezuela. It's certainly good for the fucking American hemisphere. I don't have anything against the Venezuelan people. What I see is increasingly most of the population really pissed at socialism and really pissed at authoritarianism. Yeah, they'll become a good, solid, libertarian, free market country, and they'll be much wealthier for it. That's about all. Peace out.